Hi, everybody. Welcome to Temple of Geeks Who Review, a Doctor Who-inspired podcast for fans of the long-running British science fiction television series. I'm your host, Elizabeth, aka Lady of Time Cosplay.
And I am your other host, Nate, or Doc in the Box.
We are massive Doctor Who fans, and we're here to talk about all things Doctor Who. Throughout our series, we'll be discussing the latest episodes, the classic series, spin-offs, and everything in between.
We'll also bring you some interviews with people who have worked on the show and are around the behind-the-scenes information and all sorts of Doctor Who-related, what's it called?
So whether you're a longtime fan or just getting started, we hope you'll join us for the ride.
Today we'll be discussing the latest episode, Dot and Bubble.
Dot and Bubble, yes, which I have mixed feelings on, so we'll talk about that. But if you have not watched the episode, go away, go watch the episode. It's crazy that we're over halfway through the series now, but that's what it is. But yeah, go watch the episode, then come back, and we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it.
So what were your overall thoughts on the episode compared to what you might have thought the episode was going to be?
It was pretty on par for what I thought it was going to be. I didn't expect it to be like the most amazing episode ever seen. And it was kind of mid, in my opinion. It was an all right episode, but I have a lot of other thoughts on it. And yeah, I don't know. What about yours?
Yeah, they can't all be amazing. I thought it was decent for what it was trying to do. I definitely saw what Russell was attempting to do with this episode, because they've been pretty decent about hiding anything big in the next time trailers, I feel like, which is nice. Because, the monsters are eating people, but somehow that's not quite the main... it's the main story of the episode, but I don't know if it's the main point of the episode. I don't know.
Well, the big baddie was misleading, but that was it.
Yeah, the big baddie was misleading. And then one thing that I thought was interesting, so apparently this episode was one that Russell T Davies, the current showrunner, had pitched to Stephen Moffat when Stephen Moffat was the showrunner for the show for the 11th and 12th Doctors run, but it was going to be too expensive for them to do, which I thought was really interesting because this episode, more than anything else, really felt like it could have been a Big Finish audio drama episode to me because of how much of it is contained within that bubble sphere thing, and it's just characters talking to other characters. I mean, there's definitely some visual aspects to it that they would have had to slightly write around if it was just an audio only thing. But I don't know why, but it felt very Big Finish to me as I was watching it. And so I was surprised that this was something that it was apparently too expensive to do in other series of the show, but whatever.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily too expensive to do, but I don't think the technology was there to do it properly.
Yeah, that too. That's a good point. Yeah, but yeah, it felt very Big Finish because of just how it was. Scenery didn't change a whole lot, and especially with the narration of where they were walking, just felt, I don't know. I don't know why it feels so Big Finish to me, but it did. It was a bit serious, but a bit silly, which I think is kind of Doctor Who's sweet spot, even though this one wasn't quite it for me, I think. And I mean, you can very definitely tell that this was an episode that they shot earlier on. That has been confirmed, but when I was watching it earlier, before all the promotion started coming out for it, you could tell that it had been written so that Ncuti and Millie didn't have to be on set for it a whole lot, because kind of like last week's episode, 73 Yards, this was filmed at the start of the filming block for this series when Ncuti still had stuff to finish up for his Netflix show Sex Education. So that's why you get the Doctor and Ruby on screens for most of it, and then a little tiny bit at the end of the episode.
I still like the theory. I don't know where it came from. This is back for 73 Yards. I still like the theory that when the Doctor disappeared, that he got exiled to Barbie Land, and that's where he was the entire time.
Yeah. I know, I love that. I kind of wish that they'd been able to work, what's the word I'm looking for? I wish they had been able to order the episodes differently so we didn't get 2 episodes in a row that were quote-unquote Doctor Light. He's obviously in this a whole lot more than he was in 73 Yards, but still he's not there. And it's
Yes and no, but we're going to move into moving ahead into the Susan Twist part, which is definitely more deeper into the series, which needed to be done. And I don't know if that would have been done any other way other than maybe in Boom, That's the only other time currently that I see that they interacted with Susan Twist and were able
Right.
to point out to each other, hey, I've seen this before.
Right. And I do think that was interesting because we got that in 73 Yards where Ruby was like, do I know you? And she's like, I don't think so. But obviously because of how time travel works and time loops and whatever, she doesn't remember that anymore. So this is like the first time that they are seeing her again and will remember seeing her again, which I think is interesting. Overall, I got what they were going for. It just, I don't know what it was about it, but it didn't quite work for me. But it's not like it's the worst thing ever, you know.
So early on, like super early on, when Lindy was in her bubble and everyone's popping up, all her friends, everyone in the background that's spinning, the whole thing. It first started off like, oh, this kind of almost like Barbie Land because of it wasn't natural blonde hair, it's bleach blonde, stuff like that.
Very bright colors.
Yes, however, one thing I noticed early on, once that settled in, was, especially recently, the show has been very good about representation, bringing in people of color, things like that. And there was none.
Yes, yeah, that
was strikingly obvious. And it ended up throughout the episode that the doctor was the only person of color in the entirety of the episode that I was able to notice. Maybe I missed something.
That was actually something I wanted to talk about. So I personally don't go looking for extra spoilers. I don't go looking for leaks. I try to avoid that. Even like set pictures, I'll be like, oh, that's cool, but I won't like look deeper into it because sometimes people even like film while they're filming, whatever. So apparently there is a leak going around that says that the ending of we'll just skip to talking about the ending of the episode and we'll go back and talk more about it later. But apparently the leak that's going around is that the end of the episode is supposed to be that they don't accept the doctor's help because they're all horrible, horrible racists, which I definitely understand that reading, especially because, like you said, when I went back and like looked at the cast, I'm like, yeah, that is, because they have been so good about making sure that they have representation and diversity, on screen and behind screen, so like, I definitely can see where that reading comes from, but I don't know if that's exactly what they were going for, Like, do you have any takes on the ending? I mean,
no, because that's kind of how I felt too. Like the doctor was the only person. I mean, granted, there were only two people who interrupted her bubble. The doctor popped up and she's like, ew, swipe immediately, but gave Ruby a chance. So, I mean, granted, there are only two people to work with on here, so it's one or the other. But I had that impression early on that, like, is this intentional? Is this an unspoken play on racism thing that the high class, high society, richest of the rich children are all of one demographic? Or I don't know. I don't know if that's what they were going for or not.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I definitely understand that reading compared to like some other stuff that leaked about the earlier episodes that I'm like, that when I read it, having seen the episodes and then reading like the leaks or the rumors, I was like, did I miss some things? But this one I definitely understand. Definitely something that I can't personally speak on. I am very, but the casting for Lindy and all of her friends definitely felt very deliberate. But it also feels like maybe there would have been more of a reaction when she first saw the doctor, if that was the case. I mean, she, like you said, she does like swipe away, but kids who are raised to have those sorts of unfortunate, awful, racist thoughts, because that's not something that that is something that gets taught to children, they aren't shy about expressing those feelings, especially when they're in, sometimes maybe they think about it, but like if they are just in a group of their peers and they're not going to be, they're not going to hesitate to say those things out loud.
Then there was the one part after that realization, because it happened early on, that like everyone is one demographic. There are no people of color. It was just the doctor that she swiped away. they went to the overview of the city, and I don't know if this was a jab too, but it's like, and it shielded like Wakanda.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. I mean, it's not like
job?
camouflage, but I mean, it's not camouflage like Wakanda, but it does have like that bubble force field, kind of even like Gallifrey's capital city has. That little bubble that Gallifrey's capital city has.
I was just like, what the heck? Like,
I mean, it felt very like Hunger Games capital to me, especially in terms of like the styling and like how they all had very strange clothes and very odd ways of speaking, and like, oh, it's so awful that I have to work for 2 hours, but I just have to sit here. And I didn't even actually see her do any work. When she was at work, she was just like sitting there still looking at her phone. I'm like, are you actually doing anything at these 2 hours at work?
They never explained what the data streaming was. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, is this kind of like what's the episode in the Ninth Doctor series with the thing with their heads open up?
Oh, with the companion we don't talk about, Adam.
Yes, Adam.
I know what you're talking. Yeah. Oh,
I can't remember the name of the episode, but yeah. Yeah, so I'm like, I'm not sure if it was something like that, but I'm like, you're not even doing anything. What are you on Earth? The Long Game is the name of the episode that I was thinking of from. Yeah, because that's the one where they go and
on the space station, I think.
On the space station that was supposed to be like a news station, but they were, because all their heads open up and data sprite goes into their brain or whatever. So I'm like, maybe it was something like that. I don't know. But yeah, overall, it felt very Hunger Games capital to me, which I don't know if that's just because I've recently reread those books. Because I was like, oh, I want to, watch the new one, but I haven't watched the new one yet because it's not on streaming anywhere yet.
Yeah. And a side note on it, no one, again, was fooling anyone with the ages in this episode. Like, no. On screen, it was saying like 16 to at most 22. Yeah. They did not cast anyone remotely close to those ages. No. Maybe 25.
Yeah. I mean, which, it happens because, I'm sure, rules about filming with minors are such a pain in the butt, probably, that if they can get away with it, they will, which, they're going to do that. But
maybe it's just because I'm older now and then I can recognize like things slightly better. Like sometimes you forget your own age, but like you could tell when someone is not 22 and they're definitely like pushing 30.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I've gotten a little bit better about it, but that's mostly because I work at a liquor store. And so I have to like acknowledge like who I need to card. Yeah, so I mean, it felt very Hunger Games to me, especially in their like attitude of like we can do this, we have the right, we can go out, especially kind of like the people from the Capitol that like went and joined District 13 in the later books, where they were like, we can do it, and then they get there and they're like, what, like why, what do you mean that there's no fancy dresses and stuff? Yeah, like it's like, again, I see the angle where, yeah, I definitely see the reading where it boils down to racism, but I also just think that because they're these rich kids that they just think that they can do, that they have a automatic right to everything, even though they have zero practical skills. Because I was like, I'm like, is the Doctor saying that, because he was still trying to save them, and I'm like, because it wasn't like super clear. I'm like, is he trying to save them because if they go out there on their little jungle cruise boat, because it looked like a jungle cruise boat. I'm sorry, I'm a Disney adult. That's all my brain could see when they went on that boat. It even had the little,
Wait, like, I think they had the waterfall there too, didn't they?
For the backside of water? They had the backside of water. It looked like a jungle cruise boat. It's just immediately what my brain thought of. Whatever. I mean, they're using Disney money. Maybe somebody's snuck that in there somehow. I don't know. Because like this was also kind of an open-ended ending for an episode 2. Not like as bad as 73 Yards was an open-ended ending, but it still didn't completely wrap everything up. Because I'm like, okay, why is he so concerned about them going out there? Is that because that there's more of these slugs out there that seemingly, as long as you're not walking directly into them don't seem to be that much of a threat.
I think he was just worried they couldn't survive being
Yeah.
outside of their bubble environment.
Yeah, I think
Like,
that's
or
definitely what that was. Yeah.
'cause
And like,
I feel like this was over exaggerated, because I'll get into probably why he thought like she couldn't even walk. Like, the bubble was down and she couldn't even walk. She's like, I don't know what to do without the arrows, which I honestly thought was ridiculous. Like, because you think you would at least see something and know where to go. Like, the only thing I needed was, like, I'm not used to having so much space around me. Like, I've done a lot of VR before, so like I understand, like, you can get disoriented by certain things. So maybe, like, not having the bubble, she was disoriented because there was so much space. It was throwing her equilibrium off. I don't know. Maybe a mention to that, but just saying I don't know how to walk without the arrows seemed overly stupid for a person to not understand how to walk.
yeah, yeah, like that was my thought too, is because I was like, okay, is it monsters, or is he just like very aware of the fact that these people are too stupid to live on their own? Because I don't care what supplies they had in that little boat, they are not surviving very long.
Yeah, I think it was that they wouldn't know how to cook food. They wouldn't know how to hunt. They wouldn't know how to get water or purify the water. They wouldn't know what was poisonous or not poisonous. I have a feeling it was, y'all going to kill yourselves.
Y'all are just too stupid. Yeah, it's just, yeah. But yeah, like I said, for whatever reason, the thing that kept going through my mind was the people from the Capitol and the Hunger Games who decided to defect to District 13, and then had a very rude awakening for what life outside the Capitol was actually like. I'll be interested to see how that goes, because I don't think the ending is overtly what people are leaking and saying as the leak makes it seem it is, but I definitely see where that reading is coming from, especially with the casting being the way that it is.
Well, also not just the casting, but the way they reacted, like, come with us, and they just like
which I think could also be partly like them just being like, well, you're poor and you don't live like we do, and like you wanted me to like not be on my social media, are you kidding me, kind of thing.
I do want to take a moment to, because we were talking about the bubble and her walking, how the bubble acts or reacts, I thought was odd when the monster was in the elevator, how the bubble opened up and then you could see, I know it was done visually for us, for the people at home, but it didn't make sense in regards to how their technology works. Like, oh, all of a sudden the Ruby and the doctor are shown behind her and the bubble opened up and everyone's behind her now, when all it does is shield the frontal half of their face.
Well, I mean, I think that might be part of, because there was that kind of plot point where it was that the AI and the technology was like sick and tired of these people. So maybe the dot and bubble, because I think too, like the dot probably had, because of how it worked, because it hovers in front of their face and does it around them. I wonder if the dot had to move to not be eaten by the slug before they were. But I think also too, because the whole point was that it was the technology doing this to them, and the technology bringing these slugs in, that they were like, well, I'm going to make you scared before you get eaten, because I'm sick and tired of listening to you. So
maybe that's what it was, because I would say on that point, like, unless it was misdirection, I couldn't tell why it was because they were going in alphabetical order. If it wasn't her time to die, why was it directing her directly into it and telling her to proceed forward with it there if it wasn't her time? Unless that was misdirection and, like you said, just trying to make her scared.
Right. Yeah. Like there's, I think overall, like I keep saying, overall the episode is okay, but there are a little bit of inconsistencies where I'm just like, I don't quite understand, but but yeah, so yeah, we talked about the ending first, but hey, this is a Doctor Who podcast. I think that fits.
Yeah, it's all out of order anyway.
It's all timey-wimey.
What do you think about the alphabetical order thing?
I didn't quite understand
why.
I mean,
like,
I guess
all things, why'd they pick alphabetical?
Why it was alphabetical and why it was by last name alphabetical too.
Or how they missed what's his name, knowing all the information.
You would think that even if he changed his name, there would be records somewhere of what his name had been. Ricky September or whatever it was.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly
they all had
it,
very
actually.
Strange names. Yeah, I mean, I guess it would partly be because it was the computers doing it. It just maybe to the computers made logical sense, but also like, wouldn't this is going to sound really bad, but I don't have any other way of saying it. Wouldn't you want to kill off the people that annoyed you the most first, kind of thing?
Well, that I was going to go on that because I would have thought whoever used the most bandwidth, like whoever had the most likes or whoever had the most interactions or whoever was using the system more, I thought they would have like, oh, well, this person's got, 57 million followers. They're knocked off first, like to lighten their load that way. I would have thought that's how they would have structured it versus alphabetical.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this next question because this is connected to what I want to talk about. Yeah, I want to talk about, if you think RTD was accurate in his satirization / jabs at social media and the younger generations who use it. Because I don't know if this was on purpose. I mean, how old is RTD?
I'm going to say 57. I'm sorry if I'm incorrect. I'm sorry, RTD. I'm sorry, Russell.
He's 61.
A young 57.
There you go. Like, I don't know if it was on purpose because I feel like he's probably not somebody who spends a whole lot of time on the internet. I mean, he's definitely on Instagram more than like Stephen Moffat is or whatever, who is also probably of a similar age. So I don't know if it was on purpose, but I did think that Lindy outing Ricky as having a name that was higher up in the alphabet than what he used it felt like a very fascinating, and again, I don't know if it's on purpose, but it felt to me like it kind of reminded me of how sometimes people will call out or leak information about these bigger names, both as a distraction for what they're doing to kind of hide, what they themselves are not posting, and to get more notoriety for themselves by exposing somebody. Like, I don't know if that was on purpose, but that was like the connection that my brain made.
Okay, I had a couple connections with this. One of them was Voyage of the Damned, where the doctor, I forget, it was like was it like a rich millionaire or billionaire, something like that.
Yeah,
he's like,
the guy
why did you have to survive and not this person? Like, yeah. He gets all pissed off. Like, but even though the doctor and Ruby don't get to see what happens here, it was that type of thing that not always the good person isn't always going to be saved. I think that was a point, and it reminded me of that. Another thing was this felt like that interaction with the good person dying and the bad person getting out was kind of more like, ooh, that was dark. Like, this is going back into Torchwood days where things aren't very, everything is happily ever after. What was the other thing? There was another thought I had on it, but those were the two main ones.
I've seen a lot of people who, because obviously not everybody's seen the episode as we're recording this yet, but I have seen a lot of reviews that say it reminded them. I've never watched Black Mirror, but people were saying it felt like very much like a Black Mirror episode as well.
Okay.
Like the
I never saw Black Mirror.
Yeah.
I kept seeing Black Mirror being referred to as like another Twilight Zone. I got that with 73 Yards. I know we went over that in the last podcast, but I didn't really get Twilight Zone from this episode.
Yeah, Black Mirror, to my understanding, I've seen like clips here and there, but Black Mirror is kind of like Twilight Zone, but like technology bad, raw kind of thing, which yes and no. Yeah, I do know, like, just because I have been in this fandom since, oh gosh, when did I start watching this show? 2011, 2012. The first series I watched go out as it was on air, like airing on BBC America, was Matt Smith's last episode. But I had, obviously watched all the episodes, the 2005 on before that. Being in this fandom, knowing what this fandom is like, this is definitely an episode that's going to rely very heavily on people's media literacy and reading comprehension to get that doesn't always exist in this fandom, to put it bluntly. Because I do think it like I said, the episode doesn't 100% work for me, but I do think it is an interesting look at social media as a whole, even if it wasn't completely on purpose on Russell's part.
So the other thing I just remembered, the point that I think with her turning on September was also we needed to not like this character at the end of the episode because of
Yes.
the outcome.
Yeah.
If we just thought we would have wanted this person to be saved and like, why aren't you going? You're so stupid. But after it's like,
Yeah.
leave, get
Yeah.
out of here. If you
Yeah.
die, you die. I don't care about you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's also why she turned on him, because
Right.
we needed to understand that these people they're innocent in a way, but they weren't necessarily good people also.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Because, I think that one thing that hopefully people will understand is this is not about, or at least to my reading, it's not about social media as a whole, but it's very specifically about wealthy young kids, influencers, whatever, being on social media and existing in their bubble and not looking at things outside of that and thinking anything outside of that is
Being
just
out of touch with
ridiculous
the
and
reality.
stupid. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think it's like it's something that I maybe want to like dive into deeper. Maybe I'll write something, I don't know, but it's very much focused on these wealthy kids existing in their very literal bubble, both the one around their head and around their city.
How'd the slugs get the list though? Like, did the AI discipline them for eating someone out of order if they tripped into them? Like,
yeah,
how'd that work?
yeah, I know. Like, there's just some. I mean, I do think it's very like an interesting concept to think about the AI or the algorithm learning to hate its users just because they're talking about such stupid stuff constantly all day, from like literally the moment they wake up until they go to bed. Which, like, when the shot in the episode where she like wakes up and immediately she's like dot and bubble, I'm like, oh, that's like how I look at my phone first thing in the morning before I get out of bed.
Yep.
Like, oh, I've been seen. I don't like that.
Question on the slugs though. So it sounded like in I only watched the episode the once. So
me too,
it sounded like maybe did the AI genetically create them, or did they let them in? Because they were also on the home world.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if they were. I want to say I thought I heard them say something about them being engineered, but maybe they weren't. I'm not sure. If they're engineered, why didn't they have? They didn't have arms, so how did they open doors and get places?
Yeah, I definitely think it, like, I wonder if there's supposed to be some connection to space babies in this episode, where like maybe the computer, like there's some, like, yeah, that's her mom, but it's like, kind of like the space babies, and something created them using that tech. I don't know, but yeah, like there's a lot of questions in this episode that didn't quite get answered, and compared to 73 Yards, where I was kind of willing to go along with that because it was like fairy tale weird, folklore stuff, but this is like sci-fi more, so it needs more answers to questions that didn't necessarily.
No, I need answers in general.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah. It's like there's something, kind of like we talked about, like with Listen and some of the other stuff. Like I can understand not getting answers, but there was definitely more questions that needed answering for this episode, I feel like, overall.
Yeah, when we just covered that in the last episode. If you didn't listen to our last podcast, listen to it, because we go into things like when there's an entity that is unknown and you never find out what the entity is, it adds to the suspense factor of what was it. But when there is a suspense factor to a plot line, it doesn't work because you're constantly wondering why. And when you don't have the why, it I don't know, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah, I think because a lot of the whys and the okay, but why, a lot of the whys and a lot of the not quite understanding why things happened the way that they did in 73 Yards are all connected to Ruby, and we know that there's more coming with Ruby's story, especially with an episode titled The Legend of Ruby Sunday, versus an episode that is definitely much more self-contained. It just needed more answers, I think, is my take on that, at least. But yeah. So I'll be very interested to see what everybody's reactions to this episode are, especially the social media aspect, because it's definitely a criticism of that, but not as a whole. I mean, because social media, yes, can be bad, and it can create echo chambers, and it can create divisions, and that's not good. But social media can also bring people together. But it's a tool, not something that people should be spending their entire lives focusing on, I think, is maybe where they were going with this. But again, it's hard to say, because, I mean, Russell is a very clever writer. He knows what he's doing, but also, like, I don't know how much a 61-year-old man really understands about social media dynamics.
Well, I mean, this doesn't surprise me, like, as far as, like, it didn't let me down. I don't know if this is a jab. It didn't let me down for RTD writing, because some of these episodes, like this one in particular, was kind of on par for what I expected, because we had, like, shoot, what was it? You just said the episode, the space station, the new space, no, the space station one with 9 and Rose.
Long Game.
The Long Game. We had the episodes like that. So it's pretty on par for the material that we're already used to. And that wasn't the greatest episode either. However, like, the seasons as a whole were good. And that's where he shines for me as a showrunner, was overall story arcs. Bringing everything together at the end. And everything in between is just everything in between. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure part of it is because they were limited in how much they could use from Shooty and Millie in this episode, because of shooting schedules and when they needed to start shooting and when they needed to have everything wrapped up by for various production things, I'm sure. So I'll be I'm already, like, looking forward to the next series, because I'm like, oh, next series, there shouldn't be any reason that there should be a Dr. Light episode. Yay. Because I just want to see more of them. I think it's, like, unfortunate that that's how schedules worked out, that this is just what they had to work with, and I understand that. But again, I kind of wish that they had not had them right next to each other. But based on, I haven't watched Rogue yet, obviously, but my understanding, there has been some talk that Rogue does lead directly into the finale, the 2-part finale, because Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death are connected episodes. They're a 2-parter. I feel like there wasn't anywhere else they could have put this episode, because of, like you said, them recognizing Susan Twist's character as being, like, a face that they keep seeing.
This is also the first time that Susan Twist's character has had any specific connection to the story, in, like, she was the mother, in supposedly, of Lindy, when she was just random hiker before, random person in the cafeteria, happened to be the AI thing of the ambulance. Yeah. And now this time she was the mother, which means that she is not just some random person. She has a family. Like, it made her character more humanized, I guess, because unless I don't know. There was another theory. I'm going to go on to it because of the use of her again and again, that I think we mentioned it before. You might have mentioned it, that, there was Maestro. Maestro was music. And then there was the toy maker, who was games. Maybe Susan Twist or some other entity that we don't know about, but is using Susan Twist as just like a reoccurring character, we'll just call them the director, who is television. And the Doctor is in episodal just antics, because television, or the director, is putting them in these episodes to figure out.
Yeah. No, I like that. I know I'm very excited to watch Rogue when it comes out, because I'm desperately curious to find out if my theory about Jonathan Groff as Rogue being a member of the Pantheon and the Duchess being a Time Lord is right. I feel like the more we get into the series, I feel like the more, like, I'm not correct about that, but I'm still very interested to see if I'm right. So we'll see. I'm very excited to watch that episode, especially because I love Jonathan Groff. I really love him. I hope he wins the Tony this year, because he's nominated for Merrily We Roll Along as Franklin Shepherd. So people will probably hear me make several references to Merrily We Roll Along next week when we talk about Rogue.
Just say it in between. Just say it in between each segment. So merrily we roll along into. I want to talk about.
Yes,
Use it
no,
like
exactly.
that. That's the bridge.
Or like literally like half the songs the list are called transition because first transition, second transition, third transition, because it probably doesn't need to talk about this in the middle of this episode, but like the concept of Merrily We Roll Along is telling the story of a 20-year friendship, but like backwards in time. So like the transition songs are like moving the plot back in time. So like they count backwards to like what year it's supposed to be. Anyway.
Sounds kind of like Memento. I don't know if you ever saw Memento. It's a bit violent. It's a story that's told backwards. This guy has short-term memory, and he's trying to figure out who killed his wife. And one of the ways he helps to remember is whenever he finds a fact, he tattoos it on his body.
Okay.
But it's
like
told backwards. Like, oh wait, what? Like
the silence when they would.
Oh, the marks. Yeah, the marks. Yeah. I was like, I don't remember tattoos, but I got you. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I apologize in advance for how much I will talk about Merrily next week. Probably not a lot because I feel like that'll be a very interesting episode. But so something we usually talk about like second, but because we got on to talking about the ending, which again, very appropriate for a Doctor Who podcast, were there any like standout performances or moments in this episode for you?
Shooty spat.
It was very noticeable. He and Jonathan Groff will get along just great.
I was like, dang. Yeah. Not in a negative way, just like you could tell like how like pissed he was, like how passionate, how much into it he was. And I had to actually rewind this part because I thought it was distracting to me. I thought he had a chunk of spit on his coat, like after it, like because there was a glisten right here, but it wasn't that. It was one of like the lower necklace had like swung over and sat on the lapel of his coat, and I was like, oh, okay, like because it was right after he like got up and he spat, and it just went wow, and it just was like this glistening part right here, but. Yeah, that part you could just see like the disbelief in him, like the doctor just being so like, "Are you guys serious?" Like he knows they're just gonna die out there. They can't make it.
Not pleasant, quick deaths either.
No,
unless they get eaten. But you know,
they might get. Not even that. They might not even get eaten. Like we were talking about, like they probably can't even hunt for food. They don't even know it's poisonous. So they're either gonna like starve or freeze to death, or they have no shelter. Like they know nothing. That one dude who was with the long hippie hair, because he just I call him a hippie hair because he just looked like he was more rugged than everyone else for whatever reason. I don't know why, because everyone's even September, even though he's like, I'd shut it off and I'd read a book.
Yes.
He still had the appearance of being like
never done a hard day of work.
Yeah, exactly. This guy looked like he walked out of like the mechanic shop or something like that. Like he looks like he's seen some stuff.
Yeah.
But even though they have him, I think the doctor knows that they're just not going to make it. Like he doesn't want people to die, but he can't force people to come with him either.
And I mean, even though you really, really hate this character at the end, I thought the actress who played Lindy Pepperbean did a phenomenal job. You know, because I think it's hard probably to have a character where they are just so spacey and so just and dumb, but still like you still kind like up until she, you know, outs Ricky as having a name further up in the alphabet than her, like you kind of want her to survive mostly. Like she's not very bright, but it's not necessarily her fault that she's not very bright, I guess, even though it's shown that they do have the choice, but this is all she's ever known kind of thing. Like even though she's awful and you hate her at the end, I think she did a really phenomenal job because the entire episode is centered on her point of view. Like she is the main character in this episode, even though the Doctor and Ruby are there and it's called Doctor Who. She's like the main character, kind of like in Blink, where yes, the main character of the show is the Doctor and Martha, but like for the purposes of that episode, Sally Sparrow was the main character, and so for the purposes of this episode, Lindy Pepperbean is the main character of the episode. And just even though you just hate her at the end, like she did a really amazing job, I think, kind of capturing what they were going for, if that makes sense. You know, like she did a really, really great job. Like, yes, she's incredibly dumb, but she still makes you root for her up until she kills Ricky off.
Kind of, yeah. And there were some parallels. Obviously, like, I love Donna, but there are some parallels to like Donna as well.
Yes.
Which might have been intentional because there are theories. I actually like to get into that too.
Oh, okay.
Because the even though she was blonde, her hair, the way it was cut, the way she's like, duh, I'm not stupid. Like,
yes.
Even though she would fumble stuff and the way she would say things.
She reminds me. Have you ever seen the Catherine Tate show?
I've seen some clips of things.
Yes, yeah. I cannot for the life of me remember the character, but whatever that school girl character is that Catherine plays, that especially in like you've probably seen the one
who isn't bothered.
I ain't bothered.
I ain't bothered. Yeah.
I ain't bothered though. That's who Lindy is. Oh my God! How did I not realize that before just now?
Well,
Lindy Pepperbean is Lauren. Oh, my word.
So there have been so many like comparisons to like Space Babies with Rose, and then like this one kind of with Donna, and even like 73 Yards, you said it was kind of like Left Turn. No, Turn Left, I mean. The Donna episode. And in Boom, I was like, oh my God, this is like Clara and 12. Like there's a lot of, it feels like there's a lot of callbacks to previous companions.
And 73 Yards is also a little bit Martha, too, I feel like, now that I think about it, in terms of, like, having to be so far without the Doctor and solve it on her own kind of thing, too. And bring back the Doctor.
Oh, and the Distance of Measure, I guess. Because, or the, I don't know. Because Martha was the one who walked the earth.
She's amazing in Star, and I hope she comes back, but also, I don't know when. Rima might have put that in her schedule, so... Martha Jones. So
there are so many comparisons to that and, you know, Ruby and connections to old companions and things like that. And I have a feeling that Ruby, you mentioned maybe Ruby is something like an offspring of the Toymaker in some way or some form. And I think she might be that, but I think she is memory. And not just the memory of companions, but also the memory the Doctor's working memory, because Ruby was abandoned and was left. Doesn't know who her parents were, doesn't know where she came from, and neither does the Doctor. And maybe that's why the figure who left Ruby looks like 13 in a way, with the high-rise pants and the coat and the hood and everything. And maybe that's why the memory changes every time the Doctor thinks about Ruby, like seeing Ruby, is because maybe Ruby is memory, and it's the memory of the Doctor's memories, not just of himself, but his companions and things that he's done along the way.
Yeah, I know. I'm very excited to see how this season wraps up. Overall, I kind of wish that this episode had kind of tied in a little bit more, but sometimes you just need a standalone episode that isn't really connected to anything. But also, like, in a series where you now have a fewer number of episodes, it feels weird to do that. So maybe there's some connection there that we're not seeing yet until we have the full picture, which I definitely think, because a lot of these episodes have been very, I've only watched Dot and Bubble once so far, but a lot of these episodes have been very rewarding to go back and rewatch, having the knowledge of what happens at the end, because you kind of see those hints earlier. You see how it all kind of ties together if you go back and rewatch it, which I think is just good writing when you can do that and make sure that the audience doesn't, you know, you don't want to like just pull an ending out of a hat and be like, oh, this is it. You know, you when they have that set up, it's always fun to go back and rewatch. So I'll be very interested to rewatch everything once we know everything.
Yeah. And actually, I want to re-elaborate on that. The why I think the figure who dropped off Ruby looks like 13 is because since since I think Ruby is the engulfment of the Doctor's memories, and that's why there's so many companion like similarities, that 13, that the figure looks like 13 because that's the life, the regeneration that the Doctor found out that they were not from Gallifrey, that they were an abandoned child. They came from another universe. They don't know where they came from, and the memory of where they found that and where they came from is connected to 13 because that's when they found out. Yeah, so I don't know. I think Ruby's memory.
Yeah. I mean, and I've said this before on the podcast too. I mean, I even though the Timeless Child plotline didn't work for me personally, and for a decent number of people too, like, again, we will defend Chris Chibnall to the moon and back because he is a very nice person and he was great at Gallifrey 1. You know, even if you didn't like his writing, you can very clearly see that he had something in mind that he wanted to do, and he did it. So I really appreciate that RTD, unlike what a lot of people thought he was going to do, he didn't come in and just like ignore it. He's addressing it in his own way. And it's something that, again, that I've said before on the podcast, but I was always like, yeah, he's not going to ignore it and he's not going to retcon it. He is going to make it sadder. And that is exactly what he is doing with the help of Judy's brilliant acting as the Doctor.
That was, as far as talk about the episode, the only thing I thought was odd also is nobody knew that anyone was dying. Yet Gothic Paul was eaten up on stream and everyone saw it and screamed. The only thing I could say is maybe they're just like, oh, that was weird after and move on individually. But like for it to happen over and over, you think someone would have noticed. It's probably more just for us at home to be like, oh, now they know and they found out and they're scared. But if you saw it on his screen, then everyone else who's constantly connected would have had that also. I don't know. That was the other thing.
I think overall the episode would have benefited from just establishing like the rules and like how stuff worked in Find Time a little bit before everything went crazy. Like maybe if they had just shown us like a normal day for Lindy first and then gotten into the nonsense. But, you know, you got to make choices, and I understand that. I wish the episodes were just a little bit longer, but it is what it is. So, you know, I think, yeah, overall, just Dot and Bubble, I liked it okay. I definitely think it had interesting things to say about social media. If that was on purpose or not, I don't know. I'll be really interested to hear what Russell has to say about this episode once it is out, for everybody to watch. Because I definitely have some thoughts that I maybe want to explore a little bit more on how social media was portrayed in this episode, and especially, like I said, with, you know, how Lindy outing Ricky is, you know, kind of reminds me of how social media dynamics work with these big influencers and drama and everything. But yeah, I liked it. It was okay. It wasn't the best episode in my opinion, but you know, it's a mid-season episode. I would have maybe liked to be a little bit more polished given the number that we only have 8 episodes in a season now. But it was okay. I liked it. I didn't hate it. I mean, I very rarely
for me.
hate it. Yes, it was an episode. I think that's the best way to put it. It was an episode.
It was there.
It happened. It was there. It served its purpose of filling in story when the main cast were not available for shooting the episode at the time that they needed to shoot it. It worked out. I liked it. It wasn't my favorite, but it was okay.
So, I have a random TARDIS fact that you supplied to me unintentionally.
What did I do?
So, per an interview with Harper's Bazaar that Nshudi and Millie did, apparently Nshudi will not reveal his cologne.
No.
He gatekeeps it. Oh, he doesn't gatekeep it. He doesn't gatekeep it. He just thinks it is so specific and everyone needs to be an individual that he will not give it up.
Yes.
Because
which I like, but also I really, really sincerely loved the comment on that because I saw it on TikTok. I'm sure that the entire interview is on YouTube and other places, but my ass, the comment. This person's username is just some weird emoji, but the comment was gatekeep, gaslight, Gatwa boss. Which I thought was amazing. But yes, I know. I've
Which
been
was
loving watching all
funny,
of the promos.
and it was a funny jab at myself because I don't know anything about like expensive stuff. I don't know anything about colognes. And I wear, from what I was told, is I wear the scent that Peter Capaldi wears.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, which is Joe Malone, Tonka, and Myrrh, if I said that correctly. That's the scent that Capaldi used to wear. And it smells good. It legitimately smells good. So it'd be interesting to know what Nshuti likes, because I'm sure it smells great. And if I didn't know any of this stuff, I'd probably be just using Axe body spray, to be honest, because I don't know anything about any of that stuff. But I thought that was funny.
I am way too sensitive to smells to use perfume. Like, strong scents are one of my migraine triggers. So, but yeah, I know. Now now I want to meet him just to know what he smells like.
I didn't get at the premiere. I didn't get close enough to him. I was there, but I didn't get close enough to him specifically to fill my nostrils with his scent. So I'm sorry to disappoint you there.
Oh man, yeah. If any of you haven't seen the clips on TikTok of that interview with Judy and Millie, I am loving seeing all of the interviews and stuff that they did for the promotion for this series of Doctor Who. It's been a joy to watch the two of them. And
that clip was with Harper's Bazaar.
Yes.
On TikTok.
There's a whole bunch of them. They're all hilarious. Yeah. I also love every time I see the 11th Doctor mentioned when they're doing an interview together, and they just both love Matt Smith so much. They both love Alex Kingston so much too. It's amazing. It's just like again, I when I started watching the show in 2011, when the next season was going to be Matt Smith's last, I was there. That was my senior year of high school. And so to find out that Millie grew up, she was a young kid when she was watching Matt Smith's era of the show, I'm just old. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? Day of the Doctor was 10 years ago. What do you mean? I had a crisis because Up has its 15th anniversary this year. I was like, what? Up is 15 years old? What do you mean? What do you mean? Or Lion King being 30 this year, because Lion King came out the same year I was born. So.
Oh, I guess that tracks. Yeah. Ooh. I'm old. Okay.
94.
I guess that tracks. Yeah. Okay. On that note, anyway, thank you guys.
It goes. Yeah, it passes. Time it passes, whether you want it to or not.
And everything ends, and it's sad, but then it's happy. Something like that.
Something
Peter
along
Capaldi,
those lines,
12th Doctor quote. Yeah. Thank you all for listening. Again, I am Nate, or Doc in the Box, and
I'm Elizabeth, aka Lady of Time Cosplay, and that's all for this episode of Temple Geeks Who Review. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. That'd be great. We'd love to hear what you guys want to hear us talk about, especially with this season coming to a close in just a very few weeks.
Or just interacting with your own thoughts on the episode, through our social media posts, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever they call it, or whatever platform we're putting it on.
Yes.
If comment,
YouTube
Shorts. The interactions really do help us, and we appreciate anyone who's listening. And
we do. Yeah. So
on templeofgeek.com.
Follow us on all the social medias. You can visit us at templeofgeek.com for Doctor Who cosplay guides, episode reviews, and news and more. Make sure to check out our YouTube channel. I am doing weekly Doctor Who news updates. Those generally will get posted over the weekend to find out what's going on in the world of Doctor Who from all corners, including TV show news, Big Finish, comics, whatever. And thanks so much for listening, everybody. Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.